Cassia had always lived a life that was anything but ordinary. Born on a remote planet, she grew up training in the art of combat and survival. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, and Cassia had learned to adapt to its harsh realities. She was a skilled warrior, known throughout the outer sectors for her strength, intelligence, and determination. But despite all her accomplishments, there was something missing, something she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the thrill of a challenge, or perhaps the desire for something more. One ordinary evening, while relaxing in the dim-lit cockpit of her ship, an unexpected message flashed on her screen. The message was strange, mysterious, and completely out of place. It wasn't from a familiar ally or an old friend. Instead, it was from a hidden source, one she didn't recognize. The title of the message was bold and direct: The Ultimate Beauty Contest. Who will be crowned the hottest female in the galaxy? Cassia's brow furrowed in confusion. A beauty contest. It didn't seem to fit with her lifestyle. She had never been interested in pageants or superficial competitions. But there was something about the message that grabbed her attention. There was no mention of who organized the contest, nor any details about its purpose. But the last line of the message caught her eye. The winner will receive unimaginable power, wealth, and influence that can change the fate of the galaxy. Are you ready to accept the challenge? Cassia leaned forward, studying the message closely. It was clear that whoever had sent it was not interested in just a beauty contest. Power, wealth, and influence, those weren't prizes offered in your average pageant. And what did they mean by change the fate of the galaxy? Her curiosity started to grow, and with it, a sense of unease. She had spent years fighting in wars and surviving deadly missions, always living by her own rules. So why would she, a seasoned warrior, be invited to something as trivial as a beauty contest? Could this be a trap, or perhaps an opportunity to gain even more power? She didn't know the answer, but the allure of something greater, something beyond what she had ever dreamed, tugged at her. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she considered the implications. Her reputation was built on strength and skill, not beauty, but something told her that this was more than a simple contest of appearance. If there was one thing she had learned in her life, it was that nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. With a deep breath, she pressed the accept button. As soon as she did, the screen flickered to life, and a new message appeared. This time, it was a detailed instruction. The contest would take place at a massive, uncharted space station deep within the outer reaches of the galaxy. It was an invitation-only event, and only the most powerful, skilled, and attractive women from across the stars were chosen to participate. No one knew exactly who was behind the contest, but rumors circulated that it was organized by a secretive faction with enormous resources that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Cassia read the message with increasing intrigue. The invitation included coordinates to the location, and the deadline to arrive was in 3 days. She didn't hesitate for long. Her ship was ready, and the journey to this mysterious space station was too tempting to resist. As a warrior, she had fought for survival in countless battles, but this was something entirely different. It wasn't just her strength or her skills that would be tested. It was something deeper, something that she hadn't yet figured out. Without wasting any time, Cassia activated the ship's engines. The cold, dark expanse of space stretched before her as her ship glided through the stars. The journey would take several hours, but her mind raced with questions. Why had she been chosen? What was the true purpose of this contest? And most importantly, what dangers lay ahead? As her ship sped toward the coordinates, Cassia couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far bigger than she could imagine. On the way, she couldn't help but remember the last line of the invitation. Are you ready to accept the challenge? Cassia was ready. She had to be. But what exactly was the challenge? As she neared the destination, a strange feeling of unease began to settle over her. The space station that came into view was enormous, more massive than any she had ever seen. Its sleek, futuristic design gave off a cold, metallic shine, reflecting the light of distant stars. The closer she got, the more she realized that this place wasn't just a space station, it was a fortress. It was a symbol of power, a place where only the strongest could survive. Her ship docked at the station's massive docking bay, and as she disembarked, the silence was almost deafening. There was no welcoming committee, no banners or cheers, just the hum of advanced machinery and the cold metal floors beneath her boots. The station was vast and empty, a haunting reminder that nothing here was ordinary. Cashia's heart raced as she moved through the station, her instincts on high alert. Something was off. This place was too quiet, too perfect. She could feel the weight of something lurking in the shadows. It wasn't just a beauty contest. This was a deadly game, and she was one of its players. Ahead, a large screen flickered to life, and a deep, robotic voice filled the room. "Welcome to the Galactic Beauty Showdown. Prepare for the first challenge." Cashia's grip tightened around the hilt of her weapon as she glanced around, ready for whatever came next. This wasn't a game she had ever signed up for, but now that she was here, there was no turning back. And so, the contest began. Cassia stood on the cold, metal floor of the docking bay, her eyes scanning the vast space station around her. The silence was unnerving. Her boots echoed with each step as she moved toward the entrance, feeling the weight of her weapon at her side. The station was sleek, metallic, and intimidating, with long hallways and countless doors leading into unknown spaces. This wasn't a beauty contest, it couldn't be. Something about the sterile, almost empty environment made her think that this was just the beginning of something much darker. She hesitated for a moment, her instincts telling her to leave. But curiosity pushed her forward. The message had been clear. She was here for a reason, and no matter how unsettling the situation was, Cassia wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She had fought in wars, survived ambushes, and faced danger at every turn. She wasn't about to let a mysterious contest scare her away. As she walked deeper into the station, the only sound she heard was the hum of the station's machinery. The air felt cold, almost artificial, as though it was filtered to perfection, but devoid of any life or warmth. There were no other ships docked here, no people moving about. It felt like an abandoned facility, a place built for something far more sinister than a simple contest of beauty. Cassia's hand instinctively brushed the hilt of her weapon. As she continued down the narrow corridor, she had expected to see other contestants, but the place seemed deserted. It wasn't until she reached a large, open room that she found any sign of life. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and she stepped into a brightly lit chamber, filled with holographic projections of planets, stars, and alien landscapes. And there, standing in the middle of the room, were the other contestants. At first, they were just silhouettes, their forms bathed in the glow of the holographic lights. Cassia could make out the outlines of women, strong, confident, and fierce-looking. As she stepped closer, their faces became clearer. They were all different, from various corners of the galaxy. Some had the sharp features of humanoid species, while others had distinctly alien characteristics: blue skin, multiple eyes, and smooth, metallic surfaces. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken understanding that these women were not here for a beauty pageant. They were here for something much more important, something far more dangerous. Cassia's eyes moved from one woman to the next, studying them carefully. There was one, a tall and slender figure with bright red eyes and silver hair, who seemed to radiate power. Another, shorter but broad-shouldered, had reptilian scales covering her arms and neck. Cassia couldn't help but feel a slight unease. These were not ordinary women. They were warriors, survivors, and possibly assassins. As she approached them, the silence between them was thick, broken only by the soft hum of the station's machinery. No one spoke, but the energy in the room was palpable. It was clear that everyone here was sizing each other up, just as Cassia was. It wasn't a beauty contest, it was a fight, and the prize was something that none of them fully understood yet. Then, the voice came. It was deep, robotic, and filled the room, vibrating the walls as it spoke. "Welcome to the Galactic Beauty Showdown. You are the chosen few to compete for a prize that will shape the future of the galaxy. Only one of you will survive this contest. Only one will earn the title of the hottest female in the galaxy, and the power that comes with it." Cassia's heart skipped a beat. The voice continued, outlining the rules of the contest. There would be challenges, physical tests, mental games, and strategies designed to push each contestant to their limit. It wasn't just about beauty. After all, the voice promised power, unimaginable wealth, and the kind of influence that could control entire star systems. The others didn't seem as surprised as Cassia. They stood there, expressions unreadable, as if they had expected this. Cassia's suspicion grew. She had heard rumors of secret organizations, ones that operated in the shadows, manipulating events from behind closed doors. Could this contest be a ploy to recruit powerful women for some dark purpose, or was it simply a trap designed to eliminate those who were seen as a threat to a larger power? As the voice finished speaking, the room seemed to grow colder. The doors to the chamber opened, revealing a long hallway leading to a series of darkened rooms. The holographic projections faded, replaced by harsh, blinding lights that made everything look stark and clinical. The voice instructed the contestants to follow the path. Cassia hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, her gaze still fixed on the other women. She wasn't sure if they were allies or enemies. But it didn't matter. In a contest like this, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had come here to win, and nothing would stand in her way. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, its walls lined with strange symbols that Cassia couldn't read. The air felt heavy, and a strange sense of unease began to settle over her. She had been in dark places before, war zones, abandoned outposts, enemy strongholds, but this was different. There was something unnatural about this place, something that made her skin crawl. At the end of the hall, the door slid open with a hiss, revealing a vast chamber. In the center of the room, there was a large, transparent platform. It looked like some kind of arena, with a glowing outline that seemed to pulse with energy. The other women entered behind her, and the door shut with a loud thud, trapping them inside. The voice returned, its tone even more commanding this time. Your first challenge will begin now. You must survive the arena and prove your worth. There's no turning back. Cassia's pulse quickened. The floor beneath her feet began to shift, and the arena came to life, revealing obstacles and traps designed to test her skills. The walls closed in, and Cassia instinctively dropped into a defensive stance. This wasn't just about beauty, it was about survival, and she was ready to fight for whatever it was that awaited her at the end of this twisted game. The arena lit up, its metallic floor shimmering under the cold lights above. Cassia could feel the heat in her chest, the tension that had been building since she entered this place, now exploding into action. Her pulse quickened, every nerve on high alert. This wasn't a beauty contest, this was a battlefield, and she had to be ready. The rules were simple: survive. But Cassia knew better than to trust simplicity. There was always more to it, always something lurking in the shadows. The other women around her had quickly taken their positions, each sizing up the others. Some immediately looked for weapons, others scanned the arena for any weaknesses. Cassia didn't bother with the immediate rush for tools. She had her instincts, her speed, and her adaptability. Those were her true weapons. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the room, its coldness making the air feel even more suffocating. The challenge begins now. Survive and reach the center of the arena. Only one will emerge victorious. Without warning, the ground beneath their feet shifted, the lights blinked, and the entire arena began to transform. Cassia barely had time to react as the ground split open, and a series of robotic sentinels, sleek and powerful, emerged from the shadows. The metallic clanking of their movements echoed in the now dim arena, and Cassia's eyes narrowed. They were fast to fast, and each of them had a bladed arm that could slice through the toughest of materials. The first sentry lunged at her, its arm swinging with deadly intent. Cassia ducked, her instincts kicking in as she rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the razor-sharp blade. She drew her weapon, a sleek blaster at her hip, but as she aimed, she realized it was pointless. The sentry's speed was beyond what her blaster could handle at this distance. She needed something more. Quickly, Cassia scanned the arena, her mind calculating the best course of action. There were scattered pieces of debris, large metal objects, and various hazards around the arena, but there was also a central pillar, towering in the center of the room. It was the only piece of cover. She didn't hesitate. With a burst of speed, Cassia dashed toward the pillar, weaving through the robotic attackers. dodging and ducking as the sentries closed in. Her breath was sharp, her body moving on pure instinct. Just as one of the sentries reached her, she launched herself into a roll, narrowly evading its attack and gaining enough distance to take cover behind the pillar. The sentries were relentless, but they were predictable to mechanical, to rigid in their movements. Cassia watched, her mind working faster than her heart. There were patterns to their attacks, weaknesses in their design. One sentry's movements were slower than the rest, its legs slightly uneven. That was her target. She needed to disable it, and then she could focus on the others. Her fingers tightened around her weapon as she readied herself. Timing was everything. The sentries circled the arena, waiting for their next target, and she waited for the perfect moment to strike. The robotic sentry with the uneven legs was closing in, its metal foot dragging with each step. This was her chance. Cassia burst. From her cover, her blaster raised. She fired once, hitting the sentry's leg with pinpoint accuracy. The sentry staggered, its arms swiping the air as it tried to regain its balance. But it was too late. Cassia closed the distance in a split second, delivering a powerful kick to the damaged leg. The sentry collapsed, its systems short-circuiting. As it crumpled to the floor in a heap of sparking metal, she didn't pause. The other sentries had noticed her attack and were now turning in her direction. They advanced faster than before, a calculated swarm closing in. Cassia's pulse raced, but her movements were steady. There was no time to waste. She reached for a nearby piece of debris, an oversized metal rod, and swung it like a makeshift club. The first sentry came at her with its blades raised high, but Cassia was ready. She swung the rod, connecting with the sentry's shoulder with a loud clang. The sentry recoiled. Momentarily stunned, she took advantage of the opening, spinning to the side and striking its exposed back. The sentry's systems fried, and it fell to the ground in a heap of malfunctioning parts. But more were coming. Cassia had no time to celebrate her small victories. She ducked as another sentry lunged at her, its bladed arm coming dangerously close to her face. She sidestepped, but the sentry wasn't finished. It twisted, aiming its weapon at her midsection. Cassia saw the attack coming and leaped backward, her back colliding with the pillar. For a brief moment, she was cornered, but her mind was sharp. With one fluid motion, she grabbed the blaster from her waist, firing a shot at the sentry's exposed circuits. The blast hit its core, and the sentry staggered backward, its systems overloaded. The explosion was small, but it was enough to disable it for good. Breathing heavily, Cassia scanned the room once more. There were fewer sentries now, but the arena was still alive with danger. Her body was already covered in cuts and bruises, but her mind remained focused. Each challenge seemed more difficult than the last, and each second brought more uncertainty. But there was no choice. She had to keep going. Cassia's eyes flickered to the center of the arena. That was her goal. If she could reach it, she could activate the next phase of the contest, whatever that might be. The other contestants were moving toward the same goal, and Cassia couldn't afford to let her guard down. The battle was far from over. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the arena. The lights flickered, and the floor beneath her feet began to shift. It was a trap. The ground beneath her gave way, and Cassia dropped, barely able to catch herself on the edge of a platform. She hung there for a moment, suspended above a vast, empty space below. She could see more sentries, more traps. The only way out was up. And as the floor continued to shift, she realized there was no easy path forward. But Cassia had never been afraid of the unknown. She had fought battles more dangerous than this, and she had always come out victorious. This contest might have been designed to break her, but Cassia wasn't someone who could be broken. She pulled herself up, determination blazing in her eyes. No matter what this contest threw at her, Cassia was going to fight her way to the top, and this was just the beginning. Cassia's hands were slick with sweat, her muscles aching from the brutal challenges she had already faced. The arena had become a place of survival, where every move could be her last. She had fought off sentries, avoided deadly traps, and outwitted opponents, but something about the air had shifted now. It wasn't just the stakes that were rising, there was a new tension, a quiet buzz in the atmosphere that made Cassia feel like She was being watched even more closely than before. The walls of the arena shimmered, and a new wave of holographic projections flared to life. The floor shifted once more, revealing a new set of obstacles. But this time, it wasn't just robotic enemies or traps she had to face. This was different. The arena began to morph into something even more surreal. Alien landscapes, twisted, forests with trees that seemed to breathe, oceans that reflected the stars in ways that defied all logic. Cassia took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the environment. The message on the intercom had been cryptic: adapt, overcome, and rise. The true nature of this contest is revealed. She glanced around, but the other contestants had already started moving. Some ran toward the cover of the artificial jungle that now stood before them, while others immediately scanned the glowing ruins that flickered in the distance. It wasn't just a battle for survival now, it was a game of manipulation, strategy, and who could adapt quickest to the unknown. Cassia felt the pressure growing heavier on her chest. What did they mean by true nature? Hadn't they already been tested enough? She wiped the sweat from her brow and began to move cautiously, sticking close to the shadows. Her heart was racing as the scent of strange flowers filled the air, and the soft rustle of unseen creatures moved around her. This wasn't a typical competition. This felt like a test of endurance, of everything she had learned over the years. Her fingers brushed the blaster at her side, but she knew better than to rely on it now. The weapons she could access in this environment were limited, and the challenges had clearly moved beyond brute force. It was about intelligence. It was about playing the game. The first task of this new environment soon became clear. A massive, looming structure appeared before her, a monument half buried in the alien soil, twisted and ancient, covered in strange symbols she couldn't read. Cassia approached with caution, her boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The structure pulsed with energy, like it was alive, waiting for someone to trigger its secrets. Her instincts told her that this wasn't just a relic, it was a key. But to what? As she studied the structure, she heard movement behind her, a rustling in the artificial underbrush. She spun, her pulse racing, ready for another fight. But instead of an enemy, a familiar face stepped out. It was the tall, silver-haired woman with bright red eyes, the one who had exuded power. From the moment Cassia had laid eyes on her, her presence was almost magnetic, and for a moment, Cassia considered whether this woman might be more than just a competitor. She looked at Cassia with calculating eyes, as if weighing her every move. "You shouldn't get too close," the silver-haired woman said, her voice smooth and unsettling. "This place is more dangerous than it looks. They're watching, always." Cassia narrowed her eyes but didn't respond. There was no room for small talk here. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low and steady. "Not much," the woman replied. "I just want to see how far you're willing to go to win." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. This contest, it's about more than just power. It's about who can master their weaknesses, who can adapt, who can be molded into the perfect weapon. Cassia's gaze shifted back to the structure. The woman's words lingered in her mind. Adapt, be molded. Was that what this was about? They weren't here just to fight for a title. They were being shaped into something more, something dangerous. Before she could process the silver-haired woman's cryptic words further, the ground began to shake beneath her feet. The structure in front of her flickered with light. And then, suddenly, the air grew thick with a heavy energy. The monument released a deep hum, like a dormant power awakening. Someone was inside. Cassia felt her breath catch in her throat as the stone walls began to crumble, revealing a figure hidden within. It was a woman, tall, imposing, with armor that shimmered as if it was woven from stardust itself. She stepped forward with slow, deliberate movements, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. Cassia's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a competitor. This was a guardian, a protector of whatever this monument housed. The silver-haired woman beside her didn't flinch. "I told you, we're not just fighting each other. This is a test of who can control the power hidden here." The figure in the armor moved forward, her eyes locking onto Cassia. She raised her hand, and suddenly, the air around them seemed to crackle. The ground underfoot turned to glass, the trees around them twisting into strange, otherworldly shapes. This wasn't just about survival anymore. The real challenge had arrived. "Who are you?" Cassia demanded, trying to keep her voice steady as the figure advanced. The woman in the armor didn't speak. Instead, she extended her hand, and Cassia felt a surge of energy course through her. Like her very soul was being tested. It was as if the air itself had become heavy with power. And Cassia could barely breathe. The strength of the energy was overwhelming, and for a moment, she felt herself falter. But then something inside her snapped. She wasn't about to let this unknown force take her down. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to be broken now. With a fierce roar, Cassia pushed back against the power, calling upon the strength she had cultivated over the years. The energy around her shifted, crackling and dissipating, but not without resistance. The armored woman stepped back, her eyes narrowing, as if she were assessing Cassia. She didn't speak, but the message was clear. "You've passed the first test." Cassia exhaled sharply, still reeling from the overwhelming power she had just encountered. She wasn't sure what was happening, but one thing was clear: this contest had taken a darker turn, and the path ahead was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The fight for the crown wasn't just about beauty. It was about mastering powers beyond comprehension. As the figure in the armor faded back into the shadows of the monument, Cassia realized that the true contest had only just begun. What lay ahead was not simply about surviving the challenges. It was about finding the strength within herself to face the unknown and to control whatever dark forces were at play in this twisted game. Cassia's breath came in short, shallow bursts, her heart racing. The last challenge had left her shaken, but there was no time to linger on the aftermath. The air was thick with tension, and she could feel the weight of the other competitors behind her, watching her every move. They were waiting, just as she was, for the next twist in this bizarre and deadly contest. The holographic arena around them shifted once again, the once still alien forest now transforming into a maze of towering walls and twisting corridors. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as though the entire arena had become alive, responding to the contestants' every step. Cassia knew better than to feel relief. The battle had only intensified, and with each turn, the challenges became less predictable, more dangerous. She took a moment to steady herself. The silver-haired woman was still close by, her crimson eyes scanning the maze with an unreadable expression. Their brief conversation earlier had left Cassia with more questions than answers. The woman had spoken of mastering weaknesses and being molded into a perfect weapon. But what did that mean? Were they all being groomed for something larger than this contest? Could this contest be a tool for something darker, something that none of them truly understood? But there was no time to dwell on that. Cassia's mind snapped back to the present. The maze was alive with motion, and the path before her seemed to shimmer, constantly shifting in real time. She took a cautious step forward, her fingers grazing the cold surface of the walls. The sensation was unsettling, like the walls were breathing beneath her touch, as if the entire place was watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. The walls around her began to close in, forcing her to move faster. She glanced to the side, noticing that the other contestants had already begun to navigate the maze, each one moving in different directions, hoping to find a way out. There were no clues, no clear signs. This was a game of pure instinct now, and Cassia was determined to trust hers. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the intercom, breaking the silence. It was a familiar voice, the same cold, robotic tone that had guided them through each challenge. "The path forward is hidden. You must prove your worth to proceed. There is no mercy here." Cassia's skin prickled. This was more than just a maze. This was a test of everything: intelligence, survival, willpower. It was a reminder that beauty, power, and strength weren't enough. To win this contest, she had to prove herself worthy. But what did worthy mean in a place like this? As she moved deeper into the maze, the walls twisted and a thick fog began to roll in, obscuring her vision. The faint sounds of the other contestants faded, replaced by eerie whispers, as though the maze itself was speaking to her, mocking her with its complexity. She tried to focus, but the whispers only grew louder, more insistent. "Why are you here?" a voice hissed from the shadows. Cassia froze. It wasn't just the maze speaking, it was something else. Something someone was trying to get inside her head. Do you think you're ready for this? The voice continued. You can't win. You'll never survive. You're just like all the others. Cashia's grip tightened on her blaster, but she knew it wouldn't help her here. This wasn't a fight she could win with firepower. This was mental warfare. The voice had taken root in her mind, whispering doubts, planting insecurities where there had been none before. It wasn't the maze that was closing in on her. It was her own fear, her own mind. She could feel it, like a weight pressing against her chest, but she couldn't give in. She wouldn't. She pushed forward, forcing herself to take each step. No matter how heavy her heart felt, the maze seemed to mock her progress, shifting in subtle ways that made her second-guess herself. Left, right, forward, backward, it didn't matter. Every corner looked the same. She was lost, and the longer she wandered, the more the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Just give up, they hissed. You're not strong enough. You'll never be the one. You'll fail. Just like everyone else. Cassia closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. This wasn't real. This was just a game. A challenge designed to break her. She had faced worse. She had fought for survival her entire life. This was just another battle, and she wouldn't lose to her own doubts. With renewed determination, she pushed forward again, this time focusing on the quiet within herself, ignoring the voices that tried to break her. She needed to find the way out, not just of the maze, but of her own fears. As the fog began to clear, Cassia stumbled into a wide-open space. The arena had changed once again, revealing a vast, towering structure that stretched high into the sky, its walls covered with symbols that glowed faintly. At the base of the structure, a massive stone door loomed. It was different from anything she had seen so far, ancient, weathered, and foreboding. There were no guards, no sentries, but the weight of its presence was heavy. Cassia's instincts told her that this was the heart of the contest. This was the final test, the one that would reveal whether she had what it took to claim victory. But something felt off. The door wasn't just a physical barrier. It was more than that. It was a symbol, a threshold between those who were worthy and those who weren't. As she stepped closer, the ground beneath her feet vibrated, and the symbols on the door began to pulse with energy. The whispers returned, louder this time, as though they were coming from the door itself. You've made it this far, the voice whispered, distorted and hollow, but you don't know what's waiting for you inside. Are you ready to face it? Are you ready to know the truth? Cassia stood still, staring at the door. Her mind raced. The truth. What truth? She had come this far, surviving each challenge, fighting through every test. But what was this all for? Was there more to this contest than simply being crowned the hottest female in the galaxy? Was there something darker at play here? Something she hadn't yet understood? The door began to open, slowly, creaking as it revealed a dark passage beyond. Cassia took a deep breath and stepped forward. There was no turning back now. She would face whatever was waiting inside. She had no choice but to press forward. The contest had only just begun to show its true face, and Cassia was determined to discover the answers hidden within the depths of this twisted game. Her journey wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about understanding who and what she had become, and the door was the key to unlocking the next chapter of her fate. Cassia stepped through the massive stone door, the ancient hinges groaning as it creaked open. The moment she crossed the threshold, a strange, almost electric sensation washed over her. Like she had entered a new dimension, the air inside was thick, charged with energy, and the oppressive silence almost felt suffocating. The door slammed shut behind her with an echo that seemed to linger in the darkened chamber, sealing her fate in this unknown place. The space before her was vast, a hollow cavern that seemed to stretch on endlessly. The ceiling was lost in darkness, hidden by shadows that appeared to ripple and move, as though the very darkness was alive. Cassia's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim, flickering light that cast eerie, distorted shadows on the walls, the floor. Beneath her feet was solid stone, but there was a strange energy here, something she could feel deep in her bones. It wasn't just the arena anymore. This was something far more ancient, far more powerful. She moved cautiously, each step heavy with anticipation. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. that some invisible force was studying her every move. The whispers had returned, but now they weren't just in her mind. They echoed around the room, coming from all directions, too many to pinpoint. They weren't words anymore, just vague, broken sentences that seemed to blur together. Not ready. A voice hissed, "You'll never understand." Too late, another voice muttered. Cassia clenched her fists. She couldn't let this disorient her. This was it, the final challenge, the culmination of everything she had fought for. She had come this far, fought through every trial, faced every danger, and now she was here. There was no room for doubt. The chamber round her began to shift. The walls trembled as if the entire room was awakening. Strange glyphs on the stone floor lit up, glowing with an unnatural light. The symbols pulsed rhythmically, their glow increasing with every passing second. The room seemed to be reacting to her presence, to her very will. This was no longer just a test of survival. This was something more, something primal. Without warning, the air split with a low, rumbling growl, and from the shadows, figures began to emerge. They were humanoid in shape, but twisted, their bodies cloaked in dark, shimmering armor that reflected the pale light of the room. Their faces were hidden behind dark masks, their movements slow but deliberate. These weren't just contestants. They were something else, something far more dangerous. The figure closest to her stepped forward. A towering presence, its voice deep and resonant, filled the air. "You've done well to get this far," it said, its tone mocking yet admiring. "But the real test begins now." Cassia's instinct screamed. She had no idea what she was facing, but she wasn't about to stand idly by. With a fluid motion, she reached for her blaster. But as her fingers closed around the grip, she realized something. She didn't need it. Not here, not now. She let go of the weapon, her mind clearing. She was no longer the same woman who had stepped into this contest. The trials had changed her. She had learned to rely on more than just her weapons, her combat skills. It was her mind that would guide her now. The figures moved toward her, their movements deliberate and calculating. The air was thick with tension, each step they took toward her only adding to the weight of the moment. But Cassia stood tall, her resolve unshaken. The game had changed, and she was going to play it on her own terms. The figure in front of her raised a hand, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The walls seemed to contract, closing in, forcing her to fight. The shadows on the floor writhed and twisted, forming shapes that seemed to reach for her. This wasn't just an arena. This was her mind being tested, her ability to think, adapt, and survive pushed to the very limit. "You think you understand power?" The figure's voice boomed. "You think you're ready to rule, to control the galaxy? This is where we separate the weak from the strong." Cassia's gaze remained steady. She was no longer just fighting for the title. This wasn't about beauty or power or winning a crown. It was about understanding what lay beneath the surface, what had been hidden from them all along. What was the true purpose of this contest? What was the prize they had all been so desperate to claim? The figure took another step forward, and the shadows round it began to take form, turning into grotesque, monstrous figures. They were towering, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire, their bodies writhing with energy. They were illusions, projections of her deepest fears, her doubts and insecurities. But Cassia had faced her fears before. She had never backed down, and she wouldn't start now. With a primal yell, she surged forward, her body moving faster than ever. She collided with one of the shadowy figures, her strength pushing through the darkness. The creature let out a wail as it dissipated into nothingness, leaving only an empty space in its wake. One down, but there were more. Cassia's pulse was racing, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she fought off each illusion, each terrifying figure. She moved with the precision and grace of a predator, each blow more powerful than the last. The more she fought, the more she felt the energy inside her growing, an energy she hadn't known existed within her. The contest had pushed her, shaped her, and now she was becoming something else. Something more than just a warrior. Something more than just a contestant. The room pulsed with a strange, almost rhythmic beat, the shadows now retreating as the illusions faded. The towering figure before her raised its hand once more, but this time, Cassia was ready. The figure's voice reverberated through the chamber, filling her mind with words she didn't fully understand. you've learned the first lesson. But the true nature of power isn't something you can control. It controls you." Cassia stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "Then let it control me," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Because I will make my own destiny. Not you, not this contest, not anyone." For the first time since she had entered this twisted game, Cassia felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just a test of strength or survival. It was a test of identity, of will. She had fought for everything she had, and now she was fighting for herself. The figure's mask shimmered and cracked, revealing nothing but shadows beneath. And with that, the energy in the room seemed to dissipate, leaving a silence that was almost deafening. Cassia stood in the stillness, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath. She had won, but in doing so, she had uncovered something far more dangerous than the contest itself. The game was far from over. But Cassia knew one thing for certain. She had become something no one had anticipated. And whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms. The chamber was still after the final confrontation. The echoes of her fight with the shadows had faded, leaving only the rhythmic pounding of Cassia's heart in her ears. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the remnants of the illusions she had just shattered, her breath heavy and uneven. The figure, the one who had guided her through this twisted game, was gone. The shadows had retreated, and the glowing symbols on the walls had dimmed, their pulsating light now a faint whisper compared to what it had been moments before. Cassia's mind raced. What now? Had she won? The contest had transformed before. Her eyes shifting from a simple test of beauty and strength to something much darker, more twisted. She hadn't just competed in this contest to prove herself. She had been drawn into something far more dangerous, a scheme far beyond her understanding. There had been moments when she thought she might break, moments when she wondered if the contest was more than just a game. But now, as the silence pressed in on her, she felt a strange clarity. The power in the air was still humming, but it was different now, distant, as if it was fading away with each passing second. Her pulse slowed, and she felt a strange calm settle over her, as if she had reached the end of something. The fight was over, but the real challenge was only beginning. Cassia took a cautious step forward. The path ahead was unclear, but she knew that standing still wasn't an option. She had come too far to hesitate now. Her gaze shifted to the center of the chamber, where the stone door that had sealed behind her now stood wide open. Beyond it lay darkness, an endless void of possibilities. But there was something there, something she had to face. As she walked toward the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an end, but a beginning. Everything had been leading her to this moment, but what awaited her on the other side? Was it power, or was it something more insidious, a trap set by forces far greater than herself? The door opened wider as she approached, and a gust of cold air swept through, ruffling her hair and sending a chill down her spine. She stepped through without hesitation, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing in. The vast expanse of space awaited her, stretching out into the distance like a living, breathing entity. The galaxy was at her feet now, the stars a shimmering canvas of possibilities. But Cassia knew that it wasn't just the stars she was reaching, for the true power she had sought all along was no longer a crown or a title. It was something far more elusive. Something that could shift the balance of everything she had ever known. The contest had promised wealth, power, and influence, but those were empty words now. What Cassia had learned along the way was that the contest itself had been a test, not just of strength or beauty, but of something much deeper. It had been a trial of her will, her resilience, her ability to adapt and survive. And now, standing at the threshold of the galaxy's unknown future, she understood what the true prize was. It wasn't control over others. It was control over herself. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space, a sharp contrast to the silence that enveloped her. She felt different now, stronger, more aware of the power she held within her. The challenges she had faced had pushed her to the brink of destruction, but they had also revealed something she hadn't known existed within her, a kind of strength that wasn't born from combat or beauty, but from her very essence. She had proven to herself that she could withstand the darkest forces, face down her fears, and emerge stronger. No title, no crown could ever define her now. She was more than just a contestant. She was a force, the final voice, the one that had guided her through each trial. Echoed in her mind again, its cold tones laced with an eerie finality. You've won, Cassia. But understand this, power is not a prize. It is a burden. It is a path. With no return, Cassia stopped, her gaze fixed on the endless expanse before her. She had heard the warning before, but this time, it didn't scare her. It didn't hold the same weight. Power had always been seen as something to wield, something to claim, something to control. But now, she saw it for what it truly was, a responsibility, a test of character, of morality, of self. In that moment, Cassia knew what she had to do. The power wasn't meant to be used for domination or personal gain. It was a tool, a weapon, a responsibility for shaping the galaxy, for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The contest had taught her that true strength wasn't about being the strongest or the most beautiful. It was about knowing when to fight, when to stand firm, and when to walk away. The light from the distant stars began to shift, casting long shadows across the path that stretched ahead. The galaxy was full of dangers, full of unknowns. The contest had been a game, but now she was on a new path, a path that would test her resolve, her beliefs, and her choices. Cassia didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but one thing was certain: she would face it on her own terms. The power she had gained, the lessons she had learned, they weren't meant to control others. They were meant to forge a new future, one where strength was defined by compassion, where beauty wasn't just a weapon, and where power wasn't something to fear, it was something to protect. As she walked further into the unknown, Cassia felt the weight of the galaxy shift in her hands. She wasn't just a player in this game anymore. She had become the game changer. And whatever came next, she was ready, because in the end, she had learned that the greatest victory wasn't the one where you claimed a crown, it was the one where you claimed yourself.